Because on the way back, we were going to do a hike.
Yep.
But we couldn't.
Well, I mean, that's a good question for you. I mean, obviously the reason that we did this trip was to go to Trail Days, but how much did the hike improve your experience just on the weekend?
You mean the Roan?
Yeah, yeah.
Roan Mountain?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought, so if I had to, Trail Days was definitely a highlight, but Roan Mountain right up there.
Yeah.
I mean, that what did we spend, an hour there?
Oh,
an hour and a half?
It was awesome. We had a beautiful day. You could see all the way to the ski resorts, North Carolina. It was just
it was clear.
Perfect.
I got some great photos up there. And I'm planning on going back, believe it or not, because it was that nice there in Gray's Highland, where you can pet the ponies.
Oh, Grayson Highlands.
Grayson Highlands.
Yeah, it's like around Mount Rogers.
That's where I want to go. You sent me your the fugitives went up there.
Yeah. There were a lot of ponies buzzing around when they were there too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your first experience with this area of the
ramp. So I've been on the AT here in Georgia, probably a little bit of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, just because that's where I grew up. But I've, the Virginia area, the Carolinas, Tennessee, I haven't done any of the AT in those states.
Well, and I know you grew up north, but I think the other thing that's kind of cool about that section of Tennessee is it's 5,000 to 6,000 feet, and you get the fir trees and some of the evergreens that you get up in New Hampshire and Vermont. So,
right.
So that's to me is a reason alone to go, for sure.
Now, if I had to section hike, that would be one of the sections that I would do.
I'd highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. Yeah. I've obviously been through there, but to continue on the AT discussion, though, we wrapped up our trip at Roan Mountain. We gained some mileage going downhill on your battery.
Mm-hmm.
And then we hit Hampton, Tennessee, which is another stop on the AT. I wanted to find the hostel where I had stayed at the time, but we were at this point getting kind of pressed for time, right? It was starting. Yeah. It was getting later in the day. We hit our third family dollar of the trip.
Yeah, I think we got ice cream at one. We got sunscreen at another. We got a towel at another.
Beef jerky.
Yeah.
But this one was the one that we made the very intelligent decision to get sandwich supplies.
Oh, that was
by
the way,
clutch.
Friday night. I think this probably top 10 sandwiches I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
At like 11 o'clock.
Yes.
I had a Coke and it was turkey and cheese.
Oh my God. Thank God we bought that sandwich stuff.
Oh, it was so good.
Well, I had a feeling if we
rolled it was so bad. I mean,
I know.
Listen, it's total crap. We bought it at Family Dollar's, probably been sitting on the shelf for a month and a half.
Oh, but yeah.
But it was so good.
How good did it taste? 11 at night.
I know.
So we had correctly assumed that we were going to arrive after dark and not want to deal with cooking.
Yeah. As a wannabe vegan, by the way, that was, I think I went into that, having that turkey as probably one of my first meats in like the previous 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I actually had a Mountain House I could have fired up for you, but it was just so easy. Yeah. The Wisconsin bro got his cooler out. We used it as a table. But and also when we kind of pulled in there at sunset, it was reminiscent of my 94 hike, because I had rolled in Memorial Day weekend right at sunset with the sun going down at dusk, coming into Trail Days.
I didn't know
or not Trail Days, coming into Demascus, Virginia. So that was kind of cool for me, just the arrival time. So we basically took 12 hours to get to Demascus from Atlanta.
And we got some cool moon shots that night too.
Oh my God.
The moon.
Full moon. It was beautiful.
Going down over the mountains and stuff.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That was really nice.
Awesome. So let's drill down on Trail Days a little bit. We kind of touched on some of the takeaways that I took from it, but let's talk in detail.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get a brew first. So, Gary, before we drill in on Trail Days 2019, I just wanted to call out to the listeners that I do have a podcast that we did about Trail Days 1995.
Here's the sales portion.
Yeah, the N2 backpacking sales pitch. Encourage the listeners to go back and listen to that, but it's very different in that it was my 1-year anniversary of the hike, this being my 25th. And in that one, I actually interviewed a bunch of the thru hikers at Trail Days, so you can hear just what they had to say about their hike the previous year, and in going through different parts of the United States on the trail. But this is obviously a little different because we're talking more about Trail Days itself and less about the Appalachian Trail. So this was my 5th Trail Days. I mentioned that earlier. I attended during my thru hike in 1994. And then again, as I said, for my 1-year anniversary in 95. Then again in 98 and 99. But I haven't been since. And it has certainly exploded big time.
Okay, compare the outhouses today versus the outhouses from like your first one.
There was maybe a outhouse in the first one. And they did have that building, which you saw near the middle, that white building with the restrooms. Yeah. So it was like a male-female.
But we didn't use any of that.
Yeah, because it was so far away.
Yeah.
But in 94, really all the way through the 90s, you used to be able to camp right on the river in town.
Oh, okay.
And that was where I had you take that shot at me.
Yeah.
But there were some tents around there, but they must have had special permission. For the most part, the whole area was nobody there.
Well, and by the way, if people want to shower, just to get kind of to the restroom situation, you do have outhouses for the most part. The town sometimes has some restrooms in some of the bars and stuff like that. But if you want to shower, there's free showers at the pool. Yeah,
that's true.
So,
and honestly, we pitched our tents fairly close to the portalets, which was a concern, but we arrived so late there wasn't anywhere else to pitch.
Well, we did, and what was funny was I didn't smell them until the second day.
Oh my God!
When that truck started emptying them,
it was brutal.
And what I never understood, I've always thought they pulled they put a hose at the bottom of outhouses
and sucked them out.
No, they put a freaking hose right into the hole that you pee or poop in, and just suck it. That guy, whoever does that, by the way, they don't get paid enough.
I would agree 100%.
Just because that smell, you got to go home smelling like that stuff too.
Yeah, there was an hour or two where you may have thought there was BO in my tent, but let me just tell you, there was an hour or two where you didn't want to be in that area.
Yeah. No, that was why I was glad that my deodorant melted and it was so fragrant inside my tent.
Refreshing.
Yeah, it was.
Do you want to talk about the family camping area actually? Because that's where we had camped.
And I think I got some drone footage of that stuff too.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool.
I was trying to get drone footage of the entire area, but when you flew over the regular tent city, they're all in the woods. You couldn't see it.
Yeah, you couldn't see it at all.
So while I flew my drone, it's just around tent city and stuff. We got kind of the valley in there and stuff. It's kind of cool. The first night we wound up tenting and just kind of camping next to a father and daughter.
Yep.
And so when we walked up and we were pitching our tent, the guy was like reading with his headlight on and stuff. And he's like, "What's that noise?" And we told him it was the drum circle. And so he and his daughter went over there.
Well, we encouraged them. They weren't going to go. We're like, "Oh man, you got to check it out. It's an experience."
Yeah.
And they were kind of hemming and hawing.
They didn't want to go.
But
we were scared out of their minds, I think.
We talked them into it though.
Yeah.
And do you remember their response when they came back?
They said it was awesome.
Well, didn't they get in the drum circle?
Yeah, they went the wrong way and they screwed it up. They said. Yeah. And I said, "Did someone kill you?" And she was like, "No, nobody even paid any attention to us." I'm like, "That's great."
Yeah.
So, there were definitely some psychedelics probably used at the drum circle as well.
Oh, you think so?
Just a few.
Interesting. I didn't really see any use of anything, really. I mean, it seemed like everybody was pretty well behaved for the most part.
There were. I think there were 3 people that I ran into who were exceedingly obliterated, let's just say, inebriated. But one of the guys, he was a little bit older and he had definitely had just too much to drink.
Oh yeah, okay.
And it was mostly at night. And we hung out with people that we knew at night. So we didn't kind of get into, going around and meeting people or being at the drum circle and stuff like that.
Yeah, we were hanging out with a lot of people that I'd hiked with.
Right.
But, one of the first things I noticed to talk about when we got set up at camp, right?
Yeah.
All these vans kept pulling up that were shuttles. Yeah. And these people just kept rolling out of the vans with like a 12-pack or a case. And they were just all headed toward Tent City.
Yeah.
What became clear to me that Friday is really the big night.
Friday was way bigger than Saturday.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's interesting. You would not think that would be the case.
Well, my guess is, and just with talking some of the vendors at the vendor tents when I think I was just walking around and you and Roger were somewhere else. I forget. But I remember talking with a vendor at the Osprey tent.
Okay.
At the Osprey tent.
Got their patch.
I
have one of their packs.
Yeah. And
I'm a fan.
They were telling me that Friday is definitely much bigger than Saturday because what happens is people roll in on Friday and then they go do a hike on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So they do the parade.
Yeah.
And then that Saturday into Sunday, they hike and camp somewhere else.
Okay.
So once the parade's done, the town pretty much empties out, and Tent City is about half of what it was.
It definitely seems smaller. And the activity on Saturday night seems smaller, actually, on Saturday.
Yeah.
one of the other things that it surprised me, and just for listeners, and I don't know if this will be a long-term situation because cell phone coverage keeps getting better and better.
Oh yeah.
But surprisingly, if you had AT&T especially, you were not getting a call out.
None.
And Verizon worked, but the problem was I think there was so much overload on the cell towers, right?
So the thing that I know about cell towers is they're designed for a number of users, and they're designed based on the number of users that regularly use them. So for instance, when you go to a stadium and you notice that you don't have cell coverage, it's because there's 100,000 people at the stadium, and essentially the cell tower is not meant for 100,000 people in that one area.
Right.
That's what Demascus was. But I think it was totally different for AT&T. I think AT&T just had no service.
Yeah.
But for Verizon, at 4 a.m, I was uploading drone videos.
Yeah.
So I had pretty good service.
So it worked late night when everybody went to bed.
It did when everybody was in bed and their phones were off and things were just, nobody was surfing the internet. I could get decent signal. It wasn't great. It was, definitely not like speedy in the least. But you could surf, Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. And I even tried to search Trail Days, the hashtag on Instagram.
Okay.
It's not that big, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. And I think it's because of the cell coverage.
Okay.
People would probably be, again, just if anybody in Demascus is listening, probably be a good thing for you to work with the cell carriers to try and get some Wi-Fi at that location and try and expand your reach a little bit for outside of the AT.
Yeah.
I think the Instagram account for Appalachian Trail, I think they were there. And they had made mention of the same thing. So,
well, one of the ways it affected us, though, is I had a number of people that I thru hiked with in '94 had come back, and there were some specific people we were trying to meet up with, and we couldn't connect.
You couldn't. Yeah.
And so we ended up setting our tents up, and they were 100 yards away, and we didn't even know it. We didn't figure it out for like 2 hours, right? Yeah. Then eventually we were able to get a text to each other. Never could get a call.
No.
And then they came over, and we found them, and then we ended up hanging out there.
Yeah, that was a little frustrating because you'd think with that many people, it doesn't take much to set up a Wi-Fi signal or some type of repeater or something.
Yeah, and for the listeners, the tent city is basically where the Demascus ball fields are. That's probably the best way to describe where the area is. There is a family camping area, which is supposed to be family friendly and quiet. And they do allow you to consume a beverage there, but for the most part, everybody's pretty quiet.
Yeah. The family area, they were real respectful.
Yeah, very.
It was a half a mile away from the drum circle.
Yes. The tent city itself is really in the woods. You can't see it from the air at all. And it's until you get back there, it's hard to explain.
It's
huge, first of all. Massive. There's tents everywhere.
It's like one of those older kind of, what would you say? Like the troll kind of areas.
Yeah, it's like a druid forest.
Yeah.
I put some notes in here just to kind of try to give you a sense of what it was like. It was the biggest surprise for me, actually.
And by the way, we walked, I don't know how far you went, but I know we walked just kind of the main area.
Right.
It goes up into that mountain. The guy that camped next to us on Saturday night,
right,
he came down from the mountain because he had his hammock up there and he slept there. But he said it was just too loud for him. Even up in the mountain, he said people were just walking around at 3 and 4 a.m. and he couldn't get sleep in his hammock. So he decided to pitch his tent down near us. But he said a good, 400 or 500 yards up the mountain, people were still camping.
Well, I heard some other people complaining too that people were peeing all over the place too.
Yeah.
And they had there were a number of folks I noticed that left Tent City and came over into the family campground the next night we were there. But the biggest surprise for me, honestly, Tent City blew me away. It was a visual experience, especially at night. There's lights, the amount of, I don't know, they're not really Christmas lights. They're those kind of LED lights.
Yeah.
That sort of almost just completely surround the camp.
I think somebody had some solar panels out there.
It was amazing.
With a battery, like getting some electricity or something.
Yeah, well, so the whole forest is lit up, though, right? And then you've got all these little mini camps, and all the little mini camps have a group of people sitting around a campfire.
And some of them had full kitchens.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
but it just sort of reminded me of a bunch of peasants in like England sitting around campfires, playing music and just having their good times.
Yeah.
And
I mean, what's interesting is I would have expected more drunkenness to go on, but it wasn't like that at all.
No, I would agree.
It was very respectful.
I would agree.
Outside of hearing the stories of people peeing next to each other, I think everybody in Tent City used the outhouses.
Yeah, well, that's no question. And you would see a lot of people from Tent City coming through our campground going to the outhouses.
Right.
But, clearly there were people that weren't. And then I think the other thing is just how elaborate some of those camps were. You remember, we took a couple pictures of them, but
they had definitely set up. It took them more than a couple of hours to set things up.
Yeah.
They had signs, lights, chairs. I mean, we're talking like full on wood, like patio furniture.
Yeah, well, there were some pretty impressive stacks of firewood too.
Yeah.
I don't know how many campfires I counted back in there, but there had to have been like 40 or 50. I mean, it was unbelievable.
I came out of there smelling like smoke. Definitely.
And then you had the big, massive drum circle fire. Do you wanted to, can you describe that experience around the drum circle? We sort of already touched on it.
So the drums are, so if you've ever seen like a pig roasted, they're on those type of spigots. It's three, basically, if you've ever seen chemicals in big storage containers, which, by the way, I want to touch on too. Remind me, because it's a super fun site where Tent City is.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Remember we saw that?
Yeah, well, the camel was standing next to the sign.
Yeah, well, remember that we saw it was a lead factory or something like that?
So we're basically camped on a super fun site?
Yeah, we were camped. I guess they have the area fenced off where is the super fun site.
Oh, nice.
But you're right next to it, so you're breathing in all the who knows what we were like breathing in, what we were eating, what we were doing. But
maybe that explains the rowdiness around the drum circle.
Yeah, but to get back to the drum circle, so you've got these big chemical plastic containers that are on these spigots. There's 3 drums per spigot. And they can swing them around. They can beat on them. They can beat on the top. They can beat on the side. They can beat on the bottom. They can do whatever they want to these big plastic containers, and the sound travels.
Oh my God, does it travel? Well, it's almost kind of trapped down in that hollow, right? So I mean, it just
well, if you know anything about audio, bass, like for instance, in your surround sound, you have your 5 speakers, and typically your speakers are placed around the room to get different perspective of sound.
Right.
The bass speaker, the subwoofer, you can place that anywhere. So bass is omnidirectional and it travels everywhere.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is as they're beating on these drums, because you're in a valley, it just beats everywhere. I mean, that bass carries.
It's impressive.
I was shocked that my car, the Century Mode and the Tesla, didn't go off from the bass of the drums. But it was impressive, definitely.
Yeah, and they do the first night they shut it down at midnight, because I looked.
They shut it right down at midnight.
And the second night they shut it down at 1, and I actually thought they were going to shut it down at midnight, so I encouraged our group to go do a late night walk through.
Oh, you did? I had already gone to bed.
Oh man, I had to have it. It was just such an experience to go through there at night.
Did you tape it?
Yeah, I've got some good video of it, which I'll have to put up. But I mean, you saw all the people twirling fire and dancing and chanting and the mobs of people. And one of the dudes I was filming, one of the guys was trying to get me to come in. I'm like, I'm good, man. I'm good. But that was definitely an experience, I should say. So one of the other takeaways I had from this, and I mentioned it earlier, is that sleep is for the weak, right? If you want to sleep at trail days, would you recommend camping near Tent City?
Roger woke you up at 6 a.m. on Sunday, right? He shook your tent.
I actually slept pretty well, to be honest.
Be honest with you, once the drum circle stopped,
right,
I was fine.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that loud, really, once it stopped.
Once it stopped, there were some people who would walk past your tent, and you'd wake up. I'm kind of a light sleeper.
Yeah.
But the temperature was perfect. I think the temperature was really nice. The only problem was Friday night was definitely easier to sleep than Saturday night. And I think I may have just been exhausted from the drive.
Right.
Saturday, I was definitely exhausted from walking all that way and stuff. But I got a good, 6 hours per night. It wasn't anything like crazy. But if you wanted to sleep late, you can't sleep late.
No, you cannot. Well, that Sunday morning, everybody was up early.
Everybody was just packing up to leave.
Yeah, you got up at 6:30. I could have easily slept another 2 hours.
Yeah, Roger shook your tent at 6 o'clock. I remember.
Oh, I remember.
He didn't shake my tent.
I remember.
But then I was like, "Come on, we're going. Let's go. I'm awake."
Yeah, it took us like an hour to get packed up.
And I'm shocked. I know you didn't sleep on the way back, but I know you wanted to sleep. You just couldn't
there's no
sleep.
way. I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
letting you fall asleep at the same time.
I would have been fine.
So let's talk about the parade a little bit because, Gary, you can't talk about trail days without talking about the parade.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned this earlier, but the parade is what, 50% walking, 50% water fight. Are you glad that you didn't take a gun? I guess that's my question.
Looking back on it again, kind of live my life. You only live once, so you might as well experience it.
Yeah.
At the point in time where I was so hot, it was hard to think like that.
Right.
I was glad once I got out there that we had the GoPros and stuff. Seeing the water cannon from the fire truck.
Yeah.
I wish I had participated more. Now that I'm, back here and I'm in air conditioning and I'm finally relaxed.
Right.
But at that time, it was just, I wish I would have had a water gun, but I probably would have drank all the water out of the water gun because I was so hot.
I had a very large, massive water gun, and I was going to take it, but I didn't just because I got lazy, didn't want to haul it all over town. But I did notice if you had a water gun in the parade that you
got flooded.
You were a target.
Yeah. Yeah. The kids in town definitely like it.
Yeah. And I had a hard time keeping my electronics dry as it was.
Yeah.
Even with no water gun in my hand. And I was trying to do some filming and taking some pictures. So I think that's the challenge if you were to take a water gun. Don't try to film anything, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, if you got a GoPro.
Yeah, that's true.
It doesn't matter.
True. You're right. You got the
thing and most of the new phones are waterproof, but I wasn't too worried about it. I would have been worried if I had the drone. Like that guy with the drone, he got close to that fire truck, and I was like, "Send it up, send it up."
So let's talk about that. Actually, at the end of the parade, at least this year, and I don't know about years past, but they bring the fire trucks through.
Yeah,
and that thing is like a water cannon.
It got Roger, I think.
It soaked him. Yeah. There's no playing around with that thing. I will say that what I have noticed it's very different now than in the 90s when I used to come to trail days is in the 90s, there used to be a lot of locals in the parade.
Yeah.
They'd have the local different men's groups and they'd have a lot of military and they'd have, a beauty pageant group that would come through. They'd have bands. It was more your traditional kind of local county parade, you know. And they might have the Shriners in their little cars. I think the Shriners are the ones that did that, right? So right. I remember all that in the 90s, but now the parade is like 98% hikers.
Well, and what I noticed was it was your 25th year, and so your group, in my mind, should have been out front. There were a couple of people before you because they were older hikers who would, they go by year.
Right.
But I also noticed that, I guess, 2019, the guys today who were the cross-dressing.
Yeah. They got directly behind us.
They pulled up front.
Yeah, which was actually kind of cool because they were
energetic.
They were energetic, and there were tons of them. And then in the water fight, it was a lot more active because of them.
And that you could tell that they had just gotten off the trail.
Yeah.
Many of them had their first shower in quite a while.
Yeah, probably.
They had some energy.
They were probably getting that first shower from the water cannons, actually.
Right, exactly.
But you're right. Traditionally, the 2019s would go at the end. It'd be by year. I'm not sure how that got jumbled. It was a little bit, there's not a lot of room where they start the parade, and everybody's sort of just crammed in there.
Right.
So
again, I think it was just not organized.
Yeah, there was no like official, I didn't see somebody going around putting people in place.
It'd be nice with something this big to have officials kind of, do a little bit more than just, okay, what are we doing?
But I was impressed with the number of hikers that were hiking.
It was crazy.
Let me rephrase that. The number of hikers that were on the parade route.
Yeah.
I mean, it was massive. And then at the very end where we're at the bridge shooting back with a picture of all the people.
We've got some photos and video of that.
I mean, it's amazing. It's like the whole street all the way through town as far as you can see is hikers.
Yeah.
But, and then I don't know when the dressing and drag started. One of the fugitives was saying it actually tied back to our year at Appalachian
with
Trail
the guy
Days.
that you said jumped on. And
he got arrested for.
I find that hard to believe. That story is just hard to believe, though.
Yeah. Well, there was a beauty. They called it Missed Appalachian Trail Days. I actually participated in it. Fortunately, I did not make the finals. I was dressed up as Tool Time Tilly, like the local hardware lady. And unfortunately, there was some exposure that happened on stage that got one of the hikers arrested in drag. Yeah. And he went to jail, apparently. And
I think you called it sausage in a bun.
Yeah. Pickle on a platter.
Pickle on a platter.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any truth to
I
that
find it hard to believe that people are cross-dressing or dressing in drag today based on a protest that happened 25 years ago. My particular opinion is that people were doing it for attention. Yeah. And to stand out. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't find anything necessarily wrong with that. But, it is what it is. I think at the end of the day, I think everybody was just having fun.
But, you don't see anybody from 94 or earlier dressing in drag.
And that's what's interesting. Again.
So the theory is plausible.
Plausible.
Gary's shaking his head like probably not accurate.
I mean, come on. Think about it. If it was a protest for something that happened 25 years ago, wouldn't there be something in some Appalachian Trail group about, hey, show up to protest this kind of thing?
Yeah, you're probably right. It's just my pride for, my 25th year is what it is. Although I will say I thought we had one of the better banners out there. So.
You did have a good banner.
Yeah, we have had that